Welcome to Parrot TV Literary Corner. My name is Mutiu Olawuyi, and in today's show, of course, as usual, I'm with Dustin Pickering, who is my co-host, and Dr. Tom C. Hunley. So what you're hearing from the background is the presentation performance of Dr. Tom. So we're going to know who this person is by the time we're done with this program this evening. So this is Parrot Literary Corner once again. Before I go deeply into the whole show, as usual, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves because they can best introduce themselves than we would do. So as a result of this, I'm going to give a platform to our guest to briefly introduce himself to our viewers at home. Tom.
He's muted. He's unmuted. So there you go.
I was unmuted. I got it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting me today, you guys. Mutiu and Dustin. Good to finally meet you. My name's Tom Hunley. I'm a creative writing professor at Western Kentucky University. I've been here since 2003, and I specialize in poetry. And that was my band, Dr. Tom and the Mini-Me's. Thanks for showing that clip. Those are my sons. I'm afraid the band's broken up because they're getting too old to play music with Dad. It seems like we haven't done anything in a while, but I treasured videos like that.
So that was Marilyn Manson's version, or was that the Eurythmics? Or
no, you got it. You got it. We were trying to do. It's our version of Marilyn Manson's version. There were parts of the song that I couldn't play, but it was definitely based on Manson.
Gotcha. So,
although I guess he's in all kinds of
trouble now. Definitely in some trouble now. Anyway,
I didn't know all that.
Yeah, let's get on with the poetry here. You sent me your book, What Love Feels Like. I'm gonna hold it up here. What Love Feels Like. This is a really good collection. What Feels Like Love. Sorry. Excellent collection. I wondered. I had a particular poem I'd like you to start us off with, just to kind of get the program flowing well. It's on page 65. It's called Confessions of a Failed Beatnik. If you could read that for the viewers and so they can get a sample of your work.
You bet. This is a new and selected poems. It'll actually be released on Monday from CNR Press. A few review copies already went out and I got some copies, but you bet. Confessions of a Failed Beatnik. I'll admit that I shaved my scruff, patched my jeans, and then bought slacks, and what's more, a jacket, a tie, and even shoes, matching, polished, and thus disguised. I followed a trail of perfume that led like a floral fluting Pied Piper out of the village, out of Manhattan even, all the way to suburban Kentucky, where I lost myself, man, where I forgot the words to every song I'd ever sung to myself. Let my dreams come unstitched, Jack. Quit drinking myself into nowhere Zen stupors, and most afternoons, though not hungover, I'm so headachy from meetings and emails that I drive right past the brandy-colored light of just before sunset without pulling over to take it in. Then later, rather than watching moonlight, illuminate the wind combing through unmown bluegrass. I'm wiping kid puke. There. I'm shining a flashlight on the no monsters under their bunk bed. I saw the best minds of my generation toss aside their necessary suffering, lose the art of losing, trade it all in for golf clubs. I saw them trade the too beautiful intensity of feeling for the calm comfort of the girl next door's bare arms. And I'll admit, I sold out too. And of late, no one has thought to compare me to a Roman candle exploding spider-like while everyone goes, ah. No, far from it. In fact, I mean, dig this. One 4th of July afternoon, not night, I seared my foot on a sparkler. Oh, didn't I? The moral being, don't wear sandals around any kind of lit fireworks. But my kids were in an excited hurry, so I did just that. And when I showed them how to twirl the fiery wire, a hot cherry landed right underneath a strap. And by the time I desandaled, my skin was oozing fluids. But oh, listen, cats, my left hand didn't know what my right hand was handing it when it offered a handshake. It turned out to be really a hand cuff. Yes, I'll admit I put all my pot pipes and tricyclics in a box, a mildewed cardboard box I left in front of my mortgage track house with free written on the side in a pungent licorice smelling permanent ink smear. And I'll be the first to admit that I'm not free, that I'll change 2 diapers in the time it takes you to read this, that no odor-proof pail will keep that stench from clinging to my memory like tobacco to close at a dingy tavern, daddy-o. And I have to admit, but I rarely visit dingy taverns because my wife hates that smell and she makes me shower afterwards. So standing here, clean shaven and cologne and certifiably a carpooler and little league coach, I hereby admit, angels, that I disgust myself, not like Robert Lowell as Peeping Tom in Skunk Hour, but more like a Benedict Arnold of Hiptown turned double dealing traitor citizen of Nowheresville. No need to point fingers or a gun to my head, does. I'll freely admit that most full moons, I don't howl or chase cars because I have to work the next morning, and I'm not the kind of cat who wears women's underwear. I've never leapt off a bridge, put my head in an oven, attended a bullfight, shot my wife in the head while aiming for an apple, carved my skin and called it research, gone to prison except to teach a poetry class, hitched cross country, stepped in front of a car or tank or dune buggy, or run for office just to write about it. I don't even keep a bride on the side or any dark secrets, except those of my friends, most of whom are characters in forgotten novels. Because this is a confessional poem, I'll admit that I'm pee your pants scared of my kids. I mean, like they pretend to be ghosts and I pretend to be scared, right? But I really am scared, pretending not to be. Scared they'll grow up to be like me in all the wrong ways. Scared I'll run out of bread and they'll wear secondhand sweaters, not bohemian chic tatters, but real honest to Buddha, hand to mouth, sleeping on storm grates poor. Scared they won't grow up. Scared they'll grow up and I'll grow old, quick as a car crash and my poems will be totaled. Scared they'll turn me into a piano out of tune, dust on every key.
There's so much irony and so much, there's humor, but there's so serious and it's import, you know, it's all about maturity. You know, you're a kid in the 60s and you're looking at your own kids and saying, I just hope to God they don't do this, go the same route as me and, you know, go through all this rebelliousness like the Beat Generation. And there's so much history, literary history with Robert Lowell.
Yeah.
And so you compacted a lot.
Thank
and
you.
I wondered what sort of like sparks this kind of poetry from you? You know,
good catch on. You caught Robert Lowell on the beach. There's also some Sylvia Plath in there, and there's Elizabeth Bishop.
Right.
And in this case, what it was is, I was as a very young man, I decided to be a poet because I was really inspired by mid-century avant-garde poets, I guess you could say, the new American poets, not just the Beats, but the New York School and Black Mountain and all that. And so I had this image of what a poet was, and that's what I felt like I needed to be. You know, I needed to be shoeless, living in a loft in a city. You know, and then when my life took some other turns, the question was, you know, can I still be a poet? You know, can I write about my suburban wife and my suburban life and be a poet? And in fact, I feel like that experience may be overrepresented in our culture. It's underrepresented in poetry. You know, we do a really good job as a poetry community of getting the voices out there of traditionally marginalized people. You know, and a lot of experiences out there that you don't hear about outside of poetry that much. but I think, the experiences of soccer moms and people like that, you don't see so much in poems. So maybe
Right.
and maybe soccer moms, some of them would be reading poems if there are more poems out there that reflected their world. At any rate, I backed into a world that's different than the one I thought I was going to be in, and yet I still stay committed to being a poet. It's just that doing it, differently than I imagined.
Right. So there's like a little bit of irony in life itself that you find, and it kind of plays into your poetry. And I think that's wonderful how you're translating life itself and your own personal experiences into verse. And it's just it's very powerful to read that. Another question I had regarding the book that's coming out next Monday, I believe you said. I noticed there's a lot of pop culture references, especially Simpsons in one section that was.
Oh, sure.
What inspired that, and how did you go about developing the characters the way you did? Because I thought they were very believable characters.
Great question.
That you took from the actual Simpsons.
I wrote
Simpsons characters.
I wrote an entire book this is a new and selected poem. So those are selections from a book called The State That Springfield Is In. And that was a book of 40, I believe it was 40 poems, all in the voices of characters from the show. So what happened is I was about to go on a sabbatical, and you have to write a proposal for sabbatical. The word sabbatical, it comes from the word Sabbath. You're supposed to rest, but it's tricky because you're also in an academic sabbatical supposed to work. So I started thinking about what I could do that was restful, but also work, and I thought, well, I like sitting around watching TV, and I've turned that into my work. That was a form of research. Although it turned out there are a bunch of academic books and non-academic books about The Simpsons. So I started writing these poems, and what I tried to do is have the poems be 50-50, roughly my own issues plus, I tried to write about my own issues through the voice of a character from the show that had similar issues. Some of the poems ended up being mostly the character, some of them ended up being mostly me, but I tried to merge my own life and problems with the voice of a character in the show in each poem. So the poems are really very autobiographical, but hiding behind the mask of Moses Lack or whoever the character was that I was working with.
And also in the very beginning, in the first few poems, you talk a lot about your children, and I think it's very powerful for people to read this who may be also experiencing some doubts about their parenthood and especially, you talk about your autistic son and some of the difficulties faced, and you put it so well and so beautifully, I think. And those are, I'm sure, real life experiences that have translated. Do you have other poetry about in that vein, or is this just these are selected? So
each of my books or projects is different. I try to reinvent myself every time. David Bowie is sort of my role model in that. I just decided a long time ago I didn't want to be one of these poets where every book is the same,
Right.
So anyway, those new poems, they're all in the Rattle chapbook, Adjusting to the Lights.
Okay.
And these Adjusting to the Lights, it's a memoir in verse basically, and it's all about raising two special needs kids. I have a son with autism who's 17 now, and I have a daughter who I adopted from my wife and I adopted her from state foster care. She's got a whole host of special needs and childhood trauma. So half the poems are about him, half are about her. I just at some point started thinking that as normal as they seem to me, because I'm used to them, I thought maybe people would be interested in reading about them. Maybe a lot of people have not met anybody quite like them.
Right, and it also raises awareness. I think is that part of the your intention, just like let people know.
Well, and also that, yes, but also there are people out there that have children, are parenting similar children, and they don't know how to express, the feelings and experience that go along with it. So I've heard from a lot of parents. That's been really gratifying, is to hear from parents that said, yeah, that sounds true to my life too. It's a lot like what's going on in my home. So yeah, I wrote it for other parents. And also, yeah, because I think a lot of, I just want, my kids to be in a world where people understand them, or at least a few more people understand, what they're like.
Right, and would you mind reading the title poem? It's one of those poems, I think, and it's a very poignant poem, I think, at least from.
So this is one of the ones for my daughter. And it's called What Feels Like Love, of course, that's the title poem. What if I could bottle my daughter's joy at the Bruno Mars concert? As she gleamed, I love this song, as he sang, although it hurts, I'll be the first to say I was wrong. From her favorite song, Except for the Girl Is Mine, Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney in Pop Tug of War. Adoption means the girl is mine. So when a dirt boy asks her to penetrate herself with a pencil while he watches on Skype, I hiss at him like a rabid raccoon and his family moves out of town. When another dirt boy talks her into photographing herself topless before a mirror and putting it on Snapchat, I say, you don't have to be nice to people who aren't nice to you. And she says, Dad, he said, please, that's being nice, isn't it? And I can't even sleep without pills for a year. What feels like love is often a lie a boy tells, a lie you need to learn to smell. Be mine, I say. A father's a magic mirror that shows you your beautiful true self. I've never had a daughter before, but I've had sons, changed diapers, coached t-ball, soccer, basketball, football, tennis. Her mom and I wanted her the way sunlight and water want grass. When she says she won't live without some dirt boy, I feel like a gimpy superhero flying but not fast enough to protect her from her own confused heart. A father is a tree that hangs onto its leaves as long as possible, holds them high as they turn beautiful colors. Dad, a new boy has a crush on me, she gushed, and I had to ask, does he have a crush, sweetie, or did he hear you'll have sex without even a movie date first? The girl is mine, mine, mine. 0 degrees outside, icy, 5:30 a.m. I see a boy bicycling out of our driveway. He lives across town. I knew he would do that for me, she says. What feels like love is abuse when a boy talks her into giving him all her passwords to prove she's not cheating. A father is a parachute that lands you safe as raindrops on a lake. Adoption means the girl is mine, be mine, a gold mine, a treasure. Be mine because I cry when you cry. Be mine because I fear for you when you don't have the sense to fear for yourself. What feels like a punch in the nuts is really love when you love a girl who doesn't know yet how to love herself.
Wow. Very touching poem, I think. And one thing I was curious about is the way you structure it. How did you choose to structure it like that, or did that come naturally? The various spacings and italicizing at certain points.
So I modeled the first draft off of 2 poems. One was by Kavi Akbar, and the other one was by Maggie Smith.
Okay.
And his was What Feels Like Something. I forget now. I have a copy of it somewhere. But so I got the indents from him. Instead of punctuation, there's tabs.
Okay.
And then her poem, Maggie Smith, had a bunch of metaphors for motherhood. So I combined what I liked in his poem, what I liked in her poem. Metaphors for parenthood, and I went with, obviously fatherhood, combined with this whole what feels like riff, along with the indents that came from his poem.
Wow.
It's something I teach my students. I call it stylistic collisions.
Right.
And it's sort of based on Doritos. A few years ago, they had the Doritos collisions that had 2 kinds of Doritos in the same bag. So I started thinking, if you can learn from 2 poets at once and try to combine elements of their style, you'll have a different flavor, a different style than either one, something brand new. Just like when you ate a handful of chips from that bag, you combined the flavors and you got something different and new.
Wow.
So
interesting.
sometimes
And that's original to you, or is that something you picked up from somewhere? Or
the collision part is mine. So
right.
There have been, in poetry and in rhetoric, people have doing what they call stylistic imitation for thousands of years. So, but what I added was try imitating 2 people at the same time, then you won't seem so derivative,
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's, combining forces there. And
question for you.
Try to come up with an original.
Take you back to 2019 when you presented a poem, but you chose not your poem, you chose somebody else's poem. But before I ask you the question, I want our viewers to see the poem I'm talking about. Then after this, I will now ask you the question. So let's enjoy the beat.
going to read To a Friend Whose Work Has Come to Nothing by William Butler Yeats. All the truth is out. Secret and take defeat from any brazen throat. For how can you compete, being honorbred, with one who, were it proved he lies, were neither shame in his own nor in his neighbor's eyes? Bred to a harder thing than triumph, turn away, and like a laughing string whereon mad fingers play, amid a place of stone, be secret and exult, because of all things known, that is most difficult.
So of all the poem, why William Butler Yeats?
Okay, good question.
Mhm.
So that was a National Poetry Month, April, and my colleagues and I, we'd all been asked, when was it?
2009.
We'd all been asked to read, we'd all been asked to read a favorite poem for Poetry Month. And I picked that one because our dean had been fired. And he was a very popular dean, and there's a provost fired him for no good reason, and it was very controversial. And so I was sort of a way of talking about that, actually. He's talking about a friend whose work has come to nothing. So I wanted to give some comfort to somebody whose work had come to nothing. But, happy ending. He got his job back, and they actually got rid of the unpopular provost.
Oh, wow. Poetry power, huh?
But yeah, it was like a little secret message there, or maybe not so secret. I think people are paying attention around campus. Went, okay, this is about our dean.
Being sneaky there, a little sneaky. Do you think poets, when a lot of times when they write, of course, there's a lot of undercurrents of social commentary and stuff, and that, do you think that in that case, you kind of got the upper hand with the provost and whatnot, or
I mean, I doubt I had anything to do with it, but
but it was something that you were able to help your colleague a little bit, maybe, and give him some a little boost up emotionally.
Correct.
Right. And also in reading your poetry, I see a lot of what to me feels like an influence of Bob Hickok. Are you familiar with his work, or
he's actually I'm a huge fan of his. I read all his books as soon as they come out.
Wow.
Actually, right here on top of my stack, Red Rover.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So good call.
Yeah,
But
I felt that feeling of that in there, the flow and the associations going on. Very much.
I actually received he sent me a really nice email about a week ago telling me that he liked my Rattle Chat book.
Oh, wow.
Which was a really great moment.
Oh, that's excellent. That's quite a compliment. I mean, just to get somebody. I talked to Richard Wilbur once on the phone some years ago. That was really nice.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I'm feeling like, in reading your work, there's with the ironies underlining and so forth, and that's in Bob Hickok's work too. A lot of very bitter humor and associations. Do you think part of the message of your poetry is sort of like, don't take any wooden nickels? Because that's sort of what I get a little bit from some of it. A sort of sense of that's one of the themes I catch.
I'm not really familiar with that expression. It makes sense though.
Right. It's sort of like, don't believe everything you hear. Don't take things personally. That's kind of what that means. That's
I definitely, I do try to live that way. Sure.
Right. I think that's a very interesting way of presenting it, with the irony, the underlying ironies from the Hickokian irony and with the pop culture and so forth. So would you classify yourself as confessional maybe, or is there another tradition you would rather be associated with?
I'll just say this current manuscript, the new poems and the Rattle Chat book, that's definitely confessional poetry. There's no way around it, in a lot of my previous poetry, I'd kind of go in and out of, facts, and out of autobiography, just whatever made the poem better. I would have a poem that had, downright, basically lies along with things that actually happened. I wasn't too concerned. I just was concerned with making the poem better. But in the, I really wanted to get things right with my the poems about my kids. I really be accurate. So those are definitely
Mhm.
confessional poems. I mean, they were very hard to write. I don't think they're humorous,
Right.
If you look through What Feels Like Love, there's a lot of humor in earlier poems, but and
Mhm.
poems about the Simpsons, of course,
Right.
but these poems are very different. I mean, I was crying a lot of times
Oh,
while writing
wow.
them.
It was very powerful.
It's ve-
Would you
it's
say
very
that
rare to see,
poetry is kind of a
uh,
joust with life?
I have a question for you. It's very rare to
Mhm.
see someone in the area of academics to also be actively involved in performance poetry. What inspired you to combine the two?
I don't know. I always did. When I started writing poetry, I was in Seattle, and there was a really great open mic scene. There's a place called Red Sky Poetry Theater that had really good open mics once a week. Uh, some of the poets were very accomplished, in print as well as performance. And it was before the slams hit. It was right when the slams were about to hit. So I was going to those every week. Plus, I was going to my workshop at University of Washington every week. So I had two audiences every week as a 20-year-old. I had the academic group and I got their feedback on the poems. And I read the poems in public and I got a different kind of feedback. And so, yeah, good observation. I definitely did kind of merge those things. And there are others too. There's a whole school of poetry called stand-up poetry. There are a couple anthologies edited by Charles Harper Webb. Stand-up poetry, I mean, it's basically academia's answer to slam or performance
Mhm.
poetry. It's kind of a poems that hopefully are good on the stage and on the page,
Wow.
both.
My last question is Robert Frost. He said he had a lover's quarrel with life, I believe it was. Would you say that in a way poetry is sort of a jousting with life? Like you kind of tumble and tease a little bit, or you're laughing, but at the same time your tears in your eyes. You're like, you've given me enough now. Would you say your
Yeah,
poetry fulfills that, that feeling?
I think any art, is a way to make sense of life. Frost talked about a momentary stay of confusion,
Hmm.
right? You get confused, you write the poem, you're not confused, and then it doesn't last, so that's why you
Right.
got to write another
This is a
one.
processing.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a way of processing, sure, a way of making sense of experience. And there are other ways of making sense of experience. It's just, I think people pick different ways, there are different lenses for looking at the world, and poetry is
Mhm.
just my favorite of those, I guess.
So when you write, is there a sensation associated with you as you write, actually, or in the act of writing? Is there a mental or a physical sensation of any kind, like excitement or
Yeah, well,
grief
there's
or anything?
excitement when things start coming together on the page. That there's definitely excitement, a visceral, excitement for sure. Um, sometimes no, sometimes when it's not coming together, I'm still working at it, and it's you know, um, yeah. There's a moment where a poem takes off, and I get invested in it, and you sink your teeth into it, and that just feels great. Other times I'll just be working on the page and I'll just, on the screen, and I'll think, yeah, I'm not too connected to what I'm writing here. And I abandon most of those
Right.
poems, you know what I mean? Probably most of the things
Abandon
I
all
write,
hope ye enter
um,
here.
I fiddle around, and yeah, it's just if I don't see anything that I make too excited about, or, I know readers aren't going to be either. So I just move on.
Right. So if you're not
So yeah, when
possessed by the spirit, it's not going to be effective for the reader. Yeah, that's
very
advice.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the ones that possess me that make me, do multiple drafts and stay with it. And just that's a great way to spend
Right. Do you have
time,
any
isn't it?
final words for readers and writers alike that concerning poetry, the history of poetry, anything special you want to say?
Oh, I'll probably think of something when I get off, when we get done here, but no, I want to thank you guys for having me on, and I just hope some people will buy What
Feels
Feels
Like
Like
Love.
Love.
Excellent
I know the
book.
publisher.
I'm reading it myself. It's wonderful. I highly commend it, and I highly regard it. And I hope to have a review out with it very soon, maybe in Harbinger or in another journal somewhere. So we're looking
Appreciate you
forward
doing
to
that
that.
too.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so
All
much for
right.
your time.
Good to meet you.
We really appreciate the time you spent with us. Dear viewers, this is where we're going to end this session. I guess we've learned a lot from this very unique writer. That is Tom C. Hunley. Thank you for your time. We'll hope to see you tomorrow to meet another very impressive writer. Well, I appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Troy Camplin, a good guy.
Thank you,
All right.
Tom.
All right, take care.